Welcome to Exploring AI Frontiers with Coastal 7. As a global AI consulting firm blending agentic AI and human centered design, we are building the next generation autonomous agents and quantum aligned strategy with deep human centric design ethos. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Dashrad Ram at Factorial, where he's been working with startups and scale ups as a mentor and a venture partner since 2009. Ram's background spans business strategy, venture design, growth engineering, where he's helping companies unlock value through lean models and AI native thinking. So let's begin our session today on the topic what Indian startups and scale ups must do to prepare for an AI native world. Welcome to the session, Ram.
Hi there, Sneh. Good evening, and thank you for making me part of this. Yeah, glad to be here.
I've seen that in your description and profile and all, you mention a lot about, 1.0, 2.0, and now the 3.0 frontier. So,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
defines the 3.0 era for startups in an AI native world?
Great. I think just to give a little recap of what 1.0, 2.0 in my nomenclature is all about, how the Indian startup landscape have evolved since 2008 or 2009, since when I started even my journey. So if you look at the phase one of the Indian startup ecosystem, we have seen startups, more of the startups coming in the infrastructure space, because that is at a very entry level of the economic development.
Right,
So we have seen startups more in e-commerce, right? The SaaS, especially the horizontal SaaS, and digital payments, because things are really falling in place. The device penetration is improving, internet penetration is improving, right? That is like a phase one of Indian startup ecosystem, I would say. And then when it comes to 2.0, because now there is a base foundation have been laid, infrastructure have been set up, then it has really catapulted a lot of demand through digital channels, right? So then things have moved from web first to mobile first, and then omni channel, and a lot of catapulting of demand has happened for consumer brands, right? D2C. And from
right,
horizontal SaaS, we have moved to vertical SaaS, right? And the simple digital in payment infrastructure have evolved to really a big fintech ecosystem, right? So that's an evolution that India have seen in 2.0. And 3.0, definitely with the advent of AI and with whatever base foundation that have been set in the last 2 decades or so.
hmm,
uh, what I see as 3.0 is more towards, on one side you have deep tech startups coming up, because AI is definitely likely to accelerate a lot of R&D and innovation in almost all the sectors, which is really
right,
going to open up opportunities right from your space to defense to many other sectors. That is on one side. And other side, many products are going to be AI native. So a lot of industries will now start cultivating that, having that AI nativity. So that's the second quadrant of startups that I see, that which are going to be fundamentally AI native, because the way the products and value propositions are offered are going to be completely changed. And the
right,
third quadrant, I see there are many industries, many sectors which are going to be AI rebooted, because AI is it's another general purpose technology which is out, which is really going to help the humanity to unlock a lot of efficiencies, right? So, and since that is an unlocking of efficiencies, a lot of sectors and industries are going to be rebooted with AI, right? So that's where the unlocking of efficiency is likely to happen. And fourth quadrant is like a me too startups. So anybody who is really not falling into these three quadrants will be me too. That's how I look at 3.0.
right. That's a very interesting perspective. So,
Yeah.
given that India is now a strong engineering and IT backbone, what
Mhm.
are the biggest mindset shifts Indian founders need to
Hmm.
make to move to, from an AI enabled to an AI native world? And before that, could you define what AI native thinking here means?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tejaswini. See, I think the problem with India is, with respect to AI, right? The way that we understand the AI, that the way that probably we want to apply any technology for that matter, not just AI, because historically, right, no, we have become a consumer of technology, right? We have never
Right.
produced technologies. So there is a lot of consumerism which is embedded in the DNA, right? So I
Mm.
think it's the first mindset shift has to happen in breaking that consumerism. We
Right.
had to start thinking like a producer, right? That's when we will probably try to shift our mindset from being just an AI enabler to AI native, because the problem is when you really take AI just as a plugin, right? A booster pack or just a wrapper, or you're just likely to do the AI washing for your product, right? But
Yeah.
that is what is AI enabled thinking. But if you
Mm.
really have to be AI native thinking, because fundamentally the way you are looking at a product is going to completely change, because you have to assume or imagine your product as an agency eventually, which is going to deliver an autonomy, decision making, right, intelligence. From day one they has to be built into the product, right?
Yeah.
It's not building a product with some forms, some workflows, and
Yeah.
some design conversations. No, because fundamentally the way you are going to build the product is also going to change, and eventually the zero AI, zero UI is what is going to be the norm, right, in the AI native era.
Mm.
So maybe your next hire or even the first hire would be an agent, but not a person, right? So you have to design for that world. That is what is a native startup is all about. That's what I think.
Right. So you mentioned that Indians mostly, think from a very consumerist aspect
Yes.
than a building aspect, right? So in such a context, now how can we transform that legacy into AI leadership? Because AI leadership is very different from, say, tech leadership or anything else that we
True.
see today.
True. True. See, on one side, that's definitely a challenge, but India has decades of memory, I would say, in terms of service delivery, right? Because it's been almost 2.5, 3 decades that India have been the epicenter for the world, whether it is
Yeah.
a BPO or IT services, means which has a lot of muscle memory in delivery. And even, yeah, we are really good at systems integration, and we are really good at optimizing things at the lower cost, right? We have that advantage, right?
Yeah.
Now how do we really convert this to our advantage? Because in the BPO industry and IT services industry, whatever you have delivered for clients across various domains and sectors, right, that's an implicit knowledge what Indians already has, right?
Yeah.
That's the domain knowledge what Indian already has. And if you can really translate and convert this implicit knowledge into the explicit knowledge and really make them reusable by using AI, right? So that's where I see a lot of opportunities that are going to open up. So how do we really translate that domain know-how, sectoral know-how, right? And whatever service delivery expertise that we have in even simple processes to complex process, right? If we can
Yeah.
really replace building all that into building AI models for various sectors and industries, I'm sure now India is again going to be a backyard for a lot of industries in terms of AI models. So I see that opportunity at least for Indian industries to transform.
Right. So you've actually answered my next question, which is basically about are Indian startups too service oriented to innovate at scale in AI? If
Mhm.
you want to re-answer that question, you're welcome. And what cultural shifts or ecosystem shifts are needed now that we live in an AI era?
Yeah, sure. See, let me just reiterate this. See, service DNA, that is inherent to us, right? But at the same time, we can't see as a liability, because we need to start assuming that is an asset now, right? Because it's almost 2.5, 3 decades of experience. So once
Yeah.
you start this looking at the service DNA as an asset, so we just need to shift that perspective. It's
Perspective.
no more it is billing hours, right?
Right.
So
Right.
capturing that domain know-how, capturing that insight, and see how can that every single repetitive task solved for a given client, given industry, can become an AI model, an agent, right? But this requires a lot of product discipline, right? That long-term IP thinking, product discipline, which most of the service founders lack, right? So even in India, what happens? Many people, they would like to do bootstrapping because they could not access funding, so hence they
Yeah.
will start with the service because they want to bootstrap and they want to get into a product play, which never works, because there are two different spectrums, right? So fundamentally, building a service company versus building a product company are very different. right?
Right.
I think if we can just come out of the clutches and bank on our service DNA and see that how you can really build that product discipline, right? Building that IP thinking, how we can fundamentally translate all that know-how that what we have into a great AI models. I'm sure I think that really works. And another challenge is in service mindset, right? We can't celebrate any experimentation or failure, right? Because service delivery is all about, yes, you have to be prick and clean and you have to deliver to the client. I think if we can have some element of excuse for experimentation and failure, I think if we can celebrate the experimentation and failure, I think that's where the delivery mindset probably can shift to the product mindset. Otherwise, we can't scale any in AI innovation with a delivery mindset, right?
Right.
Because that is something which you really have to unlearn so that you can unlock the new age value from the AI.
Right. At Factorial, can you give me examples of how you saw this happening? Like, in our earlier conversation, I remember you mentioned about, service founders, I mean, founders who are service oriented and,
Mm.
with a service mentality getting into product. And what are the different kinds of mindsets would, say, a service company founder need versus a product mindset?
See,
And I'm
service
sure that
mindset.
you can give your own example from
Huh.
maybe Factorial.
Maybe I'll not take names, but if I had to generalize, right, service founder mindset is all about, okay, I had to have billing hours for all the resources that I have at my
Right,
hand, and I had to make sure that at the end of the month, I had to pay all the bills with whatever services I'm delivering based on whatever billability that is happening, right? That's the
right,
first and foremost mindset that what you need to have. Number one. Number two, it's all about resource augmentation. You look at resources as, okay, you have something to augment and you want to make some value and some margin on these resources. You would not look at resources as somebody who is producing value. Rather, they
right,
are cost center for you, right? So unless and
right.
until you are going to make money from them, it's like a body shopping, right? It's a
Mhm.
sweatshop. You have to make money on those resources. Otherwise, it's not going to work for a service
Right,
founder. And third, it's all about project and delivery, right? At the end of the day, you look at everything as project milestones and delivery, and
hmm.
everything has to be prick and clean, and you can't miss the timelines, right? And there is no scope for experimentation. There is no scope
Yeah,
for failure. So this is
right,
one side of it, wherein for a product founder, it doesn't work because you have to really build for long term. At the same time, you have to really iterate the product to make sure that it really hits the ICP, right? You get the traction. Yes, you make your employees to make some mistakes. Otherwise, you really can't come out with great products, right?
right,
You can't. At the same time, you can't sit waiting for the funding to come. You have to make sure that you get those early adapters and make sure that you give a great value proposition for them so that revenue will start kicking in at the earliest,
hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
they're very fundamentally different mindsets. So what I suggest, generally we don't encourage founders who have that service delivery model which is ongoing but they want to try product. We straight away so no, because that's not going to work, because that shift
Right,
itself is going to be very difficult.
hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So that's
Right,
why it's a filtration for us. We fundamentally work with founders only who have the product roadmap and product vision and who would like to work on product.
right. That's a very interesting perspective, trying to understand, the founders who come from a service background versus the ones who are building products and stuff. Is it any different for AI products and solutions in general, or how is it?
Definitely yes, because AI products are built very differently, right? Today, even the amount of code that you have to write for building a normal product or AI product, so there is a lot of time being reduced, a lot of efficiencies are going to be kicked in with whatever tools that are already there in the market. And fundamentally, the AI product architecture is very different than a typical your SaaS product or any other software product because the core of AI is all about that autonomy, right? The decision making, the intelligence, right? So the whole product architecture is going to be very different, right? So as I mentioned, right, it's not typical. Okay, you have some forms, you have some workflows, you have some rules, and you have some dashboards. That's not how the product architecture works for AI. So
Yeah,
since it's fundamentally very different, yes, right from your architect to your engineers to your other data teams in terms of data scientists or engineers or probably a multidisciplinary guys rise, who are good at prompt engineering plus machine learning, prompt engineering plus domain expertise. right? So even
Right.
the composition of product teams are going to be very different in the AI product
Mhm.
startups, right? So it's fundamentally very different.
Right. So, on that point, can you elaborate more on what a truly AI native startup might look like in terms of, you've mentioned about the team, but what about the product and the tech stack and all of that?
See, basically, it's going to be very lean, right? Even earlier, also, if you look at best of the best products are built by the lean teams and small teams, right? The
Yeah.
moment if you want to build a great product with 200 people and 300 people, fundamentally there is something wrong. But even with the AI native, because the kind of productivity that could be unleashed with the AI across the value chain of product development, so fundamentally you have to have a very lean team, and it has to be very cross-functional team, and it has to be orchestration first approach, because that is what
Right.
AI is all about, right?
Can you elaborate on that?
When I say lean, yeah, of course, you have to have a very small team. And when I say cross-functional, because as I told you, right, you need to have that multidisciplinary approach, right? Maybe an architect also has to have an understanding of how the language models work, right?
Right.
And even he need to probably understand domain for which the product is being built, because fundamentally domain is going to bring the big difference in the
Yeah.
AI, right?
Hmm.
uh, Similarly, every other person in the team, right, they need to have that techno functional and that a crossbreed of at least two three disciplines. I think that is where they're really going to bring value, right?
Right.
And when I say orchestration first, at the end of the day, any AI native product also works inherently like, a multi-agent system on its own, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then everything is about orchestration. What is going to orchestrate the master agent, the sub agents, right? This architecture is very different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant. And otherwise, because the product is not built for users to navigate through click, right? It's built for agents to think. Eventually,
Correct. Yeah.
with the MCP coming in, with the agent to agent protocol coming in, right? So the products are going to be seamlessly integrated with the digital ecosystem, right? So they're
Correct.
going to talk to various MCPs, they're going to talk to other agents. So the stack is going to be very complex, right? Your vector databases,
Yeah.
various orchestration layers, model routing systems. You may be using more than 4 or 5 models in a product, but eventually that routing of tasks for different models and the feedback loops again, because your product is going to have tentacles in many ways to collect feedback, and again each feedback loop has to feed into various models, right?
Correct.
It's a
Yeah.
very different architecture, and so teams which are a blend of your prompt engineers, your applied scientists, right, your product philosophers, or your behavioral scientists, I would say, domain experts. It's going to be very very different in AI native startups in terms of how you are going to build a product, build the team, and the stack.
Right.
Your organization chart is not just humans, right? It's
Correct.
human
Yeah.
plus autonomous workflows. That's
Correct.
what is AI native is all about.
Right.
Right from
It's
day
a
one,
very
that's the
nice
thing
way to
that you need
define
to
it.
have. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do early stage founders really strike the right balance between building custom AI models versus, like leveraging APIs from OpenAI or Anthropic and other sources?
See, fundamentally, still, I think India is far away from having its own foundation models, right? Maybe if you are here to leverage a foundation model to the extent of what benefits it can offer, I think still you
Hmm.
should go ahead with the APIs, because APIs are here to get you speed, right? It may not have the breadth that what you are looking at, but it can
Right.
definitely have a speed. Maybe if you want to really launch fast with the existing language models and all multi-model models which are really coming up fast with respect to image processing, video processing, audio processing, right? Even if you
Right.
want to have a multi-model, yeah, if your objective is to make sure that you want to launch fast, you can go ahead. But as you gain more and more users, right, more and more context, definitely you have to identify that sweet spot in terms of, okay, to what extent you can leverage the language models, and to what extent you really have to bring your custom model to make sure that that cumulative effect of users context is something which could be very exclusive to you and proprietary to you,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's where they really have to strike the balance,
Right. Right.
right? Doing
Interesting.
API makes you fast, but the custom models make you very free from dependency, because eventually you also have to choose your dependency wisely, right? You just can't be
Right.
dependent on the proprietary foundation models which are out there. Maybe a
Yeah.
combination of the paid models, the open source models, and the proprietary model what you have to build. I think this combination is what you have to strike.
Right, right. That's a very interesting, actionable point for startups.
Yeah.
So, what should be the first AI hire in a startup, say, in an AI native startup? Should it be a researcher, an ML engineer, a prompt engineer? What ideally would
As I mentioned earlier, right, it definitely has to be a multidisciplinary guy, somebody who understands the your business and customer whom you are building, and who can translate that into the model behavior and model evolution that what you are expecting to achieve, right?
be?
That means in many cases, right, this may be a product-oriented ML generalist or a promptless data engineer, right? So maybe I think we had to see how can we strike that balance to make sure that you have somebody who have the domain expertise with whatever technical skills that we are looking at. So
Right,
first hire is definitely not an engineer. It is definitely somebody who can interpret the intelligence, who can interpret the context, and who can build the value into the model, right?
right,
Because eventually it's all about how your model is going to be different,
right. Yeah.
right?
Value creation is the keyword.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, given that AI allows for 10x automation, but often without product market fit, so how
Mhm.
should startups avoid this trap of building without solving? You can
Yeah.
also share your own experiences.
See, at the end of the day, PMF is a holy grail, right? So, any PMF, the whole, if you look at the two dimensions of PMF, right, it's about relevance and retention. So, if your
Right,
product is not relevant to the ICP, and if you don't have anchors or stickiness to make sure that they are going to be retained, uh, whatever AI that you are going to bring is of no use, because
right,
eventually AI is, of course, an enabler or lever in the context. But if you don't have that core, AI not is going to come and do magic, right? Eventually, that
right,
core has to be there. But yes, this can definitely amplify both relevance and retention, but it cannot replace the need for solving that real user problem and real user friction for which you have started building a product, right?
right,
So it is definitely a propeller and a jet engine, but without that core BMF, right, you're just spinning towards, I would say, irrelevance. So it's
right.
of no use. So
Now,
you
say
can't take out the holy grail from it.
right. So, as per that, I have a question. Now, say you're building the MVP of a product,
Hmm.
but you're still not trying to understand the product market fit. In such a situation, ideally, what should the product or the marketing team do?
See, if you haven't really figured out your MVP, because most of the time what happens, MVPs are built just like full-blown products, because we have never understood the ICP, right? We have really not understood their pain point, and most of the time, founders' vision, wisdom, right, and his persistence kicks into the MVP, and he thinks that yes, customer needs everything,
Yeah,
right? And putting everything in MVP is not an MVP, right? It's a full blown
right.
product.
Product,
So I
yes.
think we cannot go wrong. First of all, defining the boundaries of MVP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless and until we really test that hypothesis of that real friction that what we want to take away, real problem that we want to solve, and
Mm-hmm.
that single value proposition or that key value proposition, right, which you really want to deliver and test it, then rest will all, it'll just go to dogs, as good as whether it is you are using AI, not using AI really doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
Right? And in fact, with AI native products, the challenge is for you, the AI models are going to start making magic only when you have a lot of data coming in, right? So if you haven't really trained the model with whatever AI nativity that you want to bring in, if you don't have enough data, but you just want to bring AI just for the sake of bringing AI, or you just want to AI wash your product, even your MVP will also fail,
Right.
right? You need to have the core, and you also need to have a purpose for AI. You just can't force fit or retrofit an AI for the sake
Yeah.
of having.
Yeah. That's a good point about
Right?
not force fitting into
Yes.
that. So, On that context, what frameworks or mental models can help startups decide when to go vertical versus, horizontal
Yeah.
with AI use cases?
Yeah, I think whether it is any product with or without AI, right? The fundamentally what I say is if you have to go vertical, you need to have a deep understanding of the domain, right?
Right.
So, for example, whether you want to go to legal tech, fintech, health tech, agri tech, whatever it is, if you want to really go vertical, you really need to understand the domain, and
Mm-hmm.
people also have to look up to you probably as a thought leader in the domain, or you have to prove there, and you need to have deep understanding of the workflows, users, their pain points, right? What are the existing systems that are already there within their digital stack? What are the challenges with those stack which you already have? How this can be seamlessly as a part of the existing stack, right?
Yeah.
So that is very important if you really have to have a vertical play. If you go horizontal, right, it's like you need to have that infra level insights, like for example,
Right.
you want to have an automating agents for CRMs, you want to have an automating agents for ERPs or some marketing tech, right?
Hmm.
So probably you just have to use this two by two, maybe trust versus transferability, right? High trust and low transfer, go vertical, right? Low trust and high transfer, go horizontal. That's what I keep saying.
Right.
So because your vertical AI earns revenue, right? But your horizontal AI, it earns replication, right? Because you can really scale very fast. So you just
Hmm.
have to choose based on your founding age. Eventually, every founder has his DNA, right? Eventually, his DNA will get into the product, his DNA will get into the team and the
Correct.
organization. So where that founding edge is, you really need to identify the founding edge and then act whether you want to be vertical or horizontal. Just had
Right.
again, you just because everybody are going vertical, you can't go vertical, and
Correct.
vice versa. You just have to identify that founding edge, which is very critical, which is what will be missing most of the time. People will try
Right.
to always beat above their strength.
Right. Right. So, usually, when is it that founders realize that should they go horizontal versus vertical? Do they or do
See,
they not?
most of the time, probably they realize only when the fingers are burnt, right?
Right.
If they haven't really spent enough time in identifying that founding edge, they make mistakes, they go ahead to the market, but they know that, okay, if it is vertical, they lack the domain expertise, they're really unable to deliver that MVP, and it's really not flying. Even with horizontal, yes, whatever that edge that has to be brought in terms of functional, because horizontal competition will be intense, right? If you really have to cut the clutter, and if you want to be the nth player, unless until you have a very strong value proposition and if you have a mature product, people will not accept, right? So if they are not properly baked in at an early stage, right, and if you have really not worked hard in understanding these dimensions and dynamics, you make mistakes, you realize, but the problem is the cost of this mistake is humongous, right?
Right.
Because in startups, right, it's all about trade-offs, and any decisions especially which are taken in early stage, they are irreversible. But even if you're going to reverse it and want to pivot it, there is a lot of cost associated with it.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
people need to be mindful about it.
Right. That's a very good advice. So, as someone who's, more like a bystander at AI for global governance,
Mhm.
what's your take on how Indian startups should approach ethical AI development? Are
Yeah,
we
I think
still at that stage?
huh, there is a lot of noise about ethical AI development. But when we say ethics, ethics is just not about, it's not a tick box, right? Because now everybody keeps talking about the ESG, right? Everybody keeps talking
Yeah.
about ethics, but we have seen, right, how in the last 5 years to 10 years, whether ESG have really played it bits coming out of the paper and really making an impact. If you ask me frankly, no. Because of various challenges, a lot of costs associated, making these tick boxes really impactful, right? So I think many startups have really failed delivering, and even for a size and scale at which startup operates, right, it's really difficult to really put so many constraints which are going to come at a cost. So I
Right.
don't think practically it is possible to really have these things, but yes, that future proofing is required, because businesses always operate in a very trust sufficient world, right? So if you don't really future proof in a trust deficient world, it's going to be different and also difficult.
Hmm.
uh, but in India, at least, what I advise is, right. So ethics has to go beyond compliance, because there is already a lot of Western compliance about ethics, right? But I think as an Indians, we really have to look at ethics differently, because our
Right.
fabric is very different, right? I think we have to look ethics beyond the compliance, because our data sets, because in AI everything starts with data and ends with data, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe whether it is public data, private data, mostly our data sets, what I see, they carry caste, they carry gender, right? They carry class, they carry
A lot of
language.
bias.
A lot of
Right.
biases already exist in data, right?
Right. Yeah.
So how is that? And also our markets have also very lower digital literacy compared to the Western
Yes.
markets
Yep.
and other markets, right? So if any startup is building AI for India, right, they really need to embed that local fairness, right?
Hmm.
It's not just global framework, right? How do we really negate our native biases which already exist in our data, right?
Right.
Probably, I think that is what is inherently being ethic, and probably that can also open up an opportunity, because we can lead the world in designing AI that works next for the billion users, not just the top 1%. Because if you don't localize ethics, right, and if you are not just risking a backlash, but you are just coding your own irrelevance to the world, that's what I keep saying.
Right. But isn't it also about, sorry, isn't it also about the availability of data, which is very skewed in our country?
Yeah, that's definitely a big challenge, but I think India AI initiative is trying to fill that gap to some extent. But Indian startups, at least to train the models, right, beg, borrow, steal, because there are many other data infrastructures which are available across the world. Probably they need to identify what digital infrastructures, data infrastructures are available elsewhere in the world, and see how contextual that data is for the model that they're building. And they had to use data across the globe to make sure that they build the models, right? They just can't wait for the Indian government to give data, or because somewhere you had to start the building the model,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But data availability is a big challenge, because fundamentally, right, even in the companies, the government enterprises, the way that we have built, we have never built any system for collecting the data and harnessing data,
Correct.
right? And but if you look at any Western products, right, Western services, even civil services, even if you have to avail a single service, why is that they will ask you to fill a very elaborated form? Because eventually that carries a lot of data, right?
Correct.
So somehow fundamentally that doesn't exist in India. Maybe
Right.
that cultural change has to start, but meanwhile that is going to fall in place. We have to leverage as many data sources as possible.
Right. So you mentioned about India AI. So, in that direction, what role do government initiatives like India AI or ONDC play in enabling startups to leverage AI meaningfully?
Huh. See, ONDC, yeah, definitely have done a commendable job. It is yet to really take off and has to really unleash its value. But the kind of democratization that it can really bring in terms of commerce is going to be huge if it is going to be put for use. But if you understand architecture, right, so ONDC, it's basically a wrapper on the various apps which is related to e-commerce, right? It could be
Yeah.
shopping carts, it could be payments, it could be logistics, it could be marketing. It's basically a protocol thinking, right? And it's
Mm.
an API first architecture, and there is a lot of interoperability for data exchange, right? So I think since ONDP itself is a wrapper on these apps, I think agentic mesh, right, can be wrapper on top of ONDC, right? I
Right.
think that's where I think India AI is anyway on one side is bringing the compute and data sets, and with ONDC wrapper, right, I'm sure you can have access to the existing data set, and maybe if we can really leverage this agentic mesh as a wrapper around, I'm sure there is a lot of incentives for entrepreneurs, especially early stage entrepreneurs, to build a lot of AI agents or to drive that agentic commerce, right? Which is definitely going to be the next big opportunity, I would say. So, like
Right.
ONDC is like an India sandbox for building agentic commerce. That's how probably you should look at it.
Right. Right. Very interesting. So, coming into your specialty, which is about venture capital and all of that. So,
Mhm.
is AI attracting the right kind of capital in India, or are VCs just chasing hype? What should founders really look out for in such a situation?
Yeah, I think if you look for last 2 to 4 quarters, of course, the funding winter is still continuing. But at the same time, even if you have really looked into the news, right? So a lot of capital on one side is chasing wrapper startups, is more like a GPT plugins, I would say. But on the other side, there are many VCs, right, who is carrying a lot of dry powder. They're really not aggressive in chasing any startup or every startup who is just labeling it as an AI,
Yeah,
right? So they're very
right.
very conservative, and it's a wait and watch mode that is happening because they want to see fundamentally how AI is going to be leveraged as a general purpose technology to make some innovations within the Indian economy or not. So it's a wait and watch mode that is happening, but this is very very inevitable, especially during hype cycles, that investors always wait and watch. They want this flux to go out and see, yeah, what is the real innovation that is really coming after this flux and after these hype cycles. So I think people will hold their purses till then, all the investors. But founders must always differentiate between this AI fast capital and AI fast capital, because people think that if you have AI, you are going to get the money, right? Maybe if you're
Right.
getting such money, doesn't mean that every money which is coming in, every VC which is coming in, they may add value, right? Today, I think you had to have that mindset of doing the reverse due diligence. You had to do due diligence to venture capitalists in terms of seeing whether they can add value to your
Right.
organization or
Right.
not, right? So from that perspective, you just can't be super happy if some you are being funded if your premise is not strong, because at the end of the day, right, maybe if the VC really don't understand how the model infra works, right, if they really don't understand what are the trade-offs with whatever latency the product may bring in, if they
Mm-hmm.
don't understand the variable cost, biggest variable cost in any native startup or product is the token cost, right? If they really don't understand how the product or model whatever have been built, right, so
Mm.
how it is really impacting the unit economics. So if
Right.
people don't understand, even without understanding this logic, if they are just pouring some money, I think that capital is a poor capital which is coming in, which is going to really break the founder.
Right.
So
Right.
in
Very
fact,
interesting.
founders need to really educate those investors, not just impress them, because it's not that every investor is really coming from the premise of the AI. Yeah, there are great VCs, yes, who understand this game very well, and they're definitely going on a wait and watch mode.
Right. And how long do you think will this hype cycle continue?
I think with the acceleration that is happening, right, the pace at which various foundation models are being launched, right, the size of
Right.
the models which are really increasing day by day, and the kind of investments which are already happening in AI infrastructure, right? I think everybody might have heard about Stargate, which is
Yeah.
a 10-year-old, 5 to 10-year-old project with almost $500 billion of investment outlay, right? Even if they're going to invest 50 to $100 billion per every year is significant on AI infrastructure, right? I think once the pace of the model evolution and the pace at which the scale is being built, right, then things will start cooling down. That normalcy will start kicking in. I think that's when probably there will be a flux of investment would kick in. That's what I'm estimating.
Right. So,
Also,
you
all
know,
this noise will also go off because everybody who are AI washing, right? So they will
right.
wither away by that time. So, and
Yes. Yes.
the only the real products which are really AI native will stand to the times, and that's when I think everything will come as a superpower once at a time.
Right. Very interesting. So, what are the business models that are, emerging globally in an AI native world that Indian startups can learn from or adapt, or do we already have them being built in India?
Yeah, I think if you have to probably look on a top-down approach, maybe if Indians are really capable of being at the top of the pyramid or at the bottom of the pyramid, again, it all depends on how the founders are really going to have the mindsets. But fundamentally, if you look at globally, right, with respect to business models, foundation model, somebody who have the foundation model and who probably can build marketplaces for foundation model can definitely sit at the top of the value creation curve, followed by agent orchestration platforms, right? And then of course MCP hubs and A2A hubs are also going to be a bigger value creators, and probably something at the lower end of the value chain, but which is where the real competition and the many players are likely to exist, is basically your agents, right? It is SaaS, but SaaS is being given a new definition. It is service as a software. It is not software as a service,
Right.
right? So in agentic AI era, it is service as a software, because I'm sure the pricing models are going to move towards outcome driven. So that's when it is going to be really transformed into service as a software.
Right.
So that's going to the model on which the value creation also. I think this is the hierarchy of value creation that I see. So it's all about where Indian founders and Indian startups are likely to play, because uh, we have SMEs in India, right, more than enterprises, right? Probably if we can pioneer, because we already have missed that cloud buzz and our SaaS buzz to a larger extent, right? So I think companies like Joha have built in India for the world, right? But building from India to India and India to the world, right? So that AI as a service for SMEs, where low code agents, right? Or if you can really start serving your local kiranas, your regional hospitals, maybe your regional service providers. I think it's all about, how can we think infra light, value heavy, behaviorally aligned, because India works differently. You can't
Yeah.
clone Silicon Valley for India, right? It doesn't work. You
Yes.
have to build AI that speaks Hindi, and it runs for 199 rupees, and it still can scale in
Yeah.
chaos. That's
Yeah.
how things will work in India, right? So you have to
Yeah.
have that mindset to build for India.
Right. So, how do the costs work out when it comes to, say, especially India,
Hmm.
given that you have to keep the cost in mind, and how do the unit economics work out for AI products, especially?
Yeah. See, fundamentally, for every AI product, the biggest variable cost is going to come from computing power,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And again, it's the derivative of your tokens, right? So how well you build the product and the model, right? And how well you train it, and how well you give the application layer, right, to be interacted with that human centricity, right? And educate to users to make sure that they will be prompt experts, so that they will consume the less tokens to get the output, right? If you really don't master that as a AI company, and if you don't educate your customer base to make sure that because eventually once the product is given to them, it is up to them how they use, right? And especially
Correct.
when models are going to become big and so big, because already the rumor is that chat gpt, the new model, is of 171 billion parameters, and it's going to grow only bigger and bigger. And even other day, Sam Altman also have made a public request that please don't use please and thank you,
Thank you.
because
Yes.
even simple hi has to run through that 171 billion parameters, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So if you really don't bring in that education and awareness within your customers who are using your apps,
Mm-hmm.
you are going to really bear that cost, right?
Right.
Because you
Right.
can't put variable cost to the customer unless and until how you do the segmentation and offer various pricing models. And if you are
Correct.
especially going to practice a outcome based pricing model, for example, you have built something for recruitment industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you want to charge them per hire for a successful hire. Eventually, if I'm going offline today, if I'm hiring a recruitment consultancy, I may pay probably 8.33% of CTC, right?
Right.
That's my cost. If I'm using AI, fundamentally it has to cost 20-30% less. Let's take I'm going to pay some 5% or 6% as an outcome based pricing. So
Hmm.
which means if the AI agent is working, the recruitment agent is working to hire somebody with a CTC of 30 lakhs, for example,
Hmm.
hypothetically. Let's say
Right.
5% of that is around 1.5 lakh, right? So if this whole agent cannot deliver with whatever targeted margin, you want to make 50% margin, for example, that means within 75,000, your token cost, your computing cost has to be taken care, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
these are the two variable costs that what you have apart from your other infrastructure, which may form very little, but your computing cost and token cost are significant. So the way you design and also the way user uses it, because eventually the application to resume ratio, right? How many resumes you get in, how you are going to take everything into the process, that is going to define this cost, right? I think these nuances need to be understood, and accordingly, the outcome-based pricing has to be set. And you really need to understand that unit economics from outcome-based pricing perspective. That's when you can optimize your product.
Right, right. That's a very nice way to put it.
Yeah.
Going with your own, ways of defining things, if you could give one principle from the 1.0, 2.0 playbooks that startups should carry forward into the 3.0 world, what would it be?
See, I think in 1.0, Indian founders have built on scarcity, and we are more jugaad, I would say, right? Because we have very less resources at hand, and
Yeah,
so we are learning the ropes. So we went jugaad. In the process, of course, we have invented many things. For example, in India, e-commerce, right? COD was invented in India. COD was nowhere, right?
yeah,
And that just happened out of our necessity, because how our consumers behave is very different, right?
correct. Yes,
And then when it comes to 2.0, it's all about scale, right? Because eventually we have learned iterating, and we have learned scaling things. And fundamentally, I think the premise remains same, because these principles are timeless, right? In India, you have to be jugaad because you are operating for India, right?
yeah,
And you have to build and build something for scale, and you have to keep iterating it with users, because you have to constantly keep having your ears to the ground, right? But what is the only one layer, right? It's eventually, since we are talking about an agentic era, that autonomy with accountability is what is going to be that additional layer, right? So that let A do the work, but we have to ensure that there is always a human aligned outcome. So we just can't ship fast, but we have to ship an aligned product, right? So
right,
of course, what I say is in 3.0, yes, still that frugality will continue. That means you will have that frugal design, you have that fast loops, you have more fail safe AI, because the leanest builders will still win in 3.0, right?
right,
But probably you are struggling to get a co-founder in 2.0 or 1.0. Maybe you don't need to worry now, because you already have your co-founder working, writing a code for you even at 3 a.m. in the morning, and it will never
right,
ask for equity, right? So you have that edge in AI era, right?
right.
So that's what I advise.
Right. That's a very interesting way to look at it. So, the final question is, what are the top three things every startup founder should do this year to prepare for an AI native future?
Yeah, I think founder really has to set that culture, because fundamentally every founder always lacks in terms of business know-how, because especially in tech world, right? Most of the founders come from tech background. Their understanding of the business fluency, business acumen, the financial acumen is a challenge, but they still have to pick up that which is timeless. But what need to be added for this is a AI fluency, right? So fundamentally, founders have to be the translators between the customers and models, right? Because everything has to be encoded into the model, encoded from customer, decoded to the model, right?
Right,
So you have to act as a bridge between your vision, and eventually it's about vector databases, because
right,
fundamentally that is what is going to where your intellectual thing, your IP is going to go and sit, and that's where
right,
your model is going to start doing magic. So this fluency is important. So the A fluency gets added, and you also have to visualize your org structure very differently, right? You just can't to have a typical org structure of how it worked in 1.0, 2.0. Maybe you have to create pods where both human and machines, they collaborate, right? And they work together. I think you have to reimagine the way how you are going to have your org structure built.
right,
And even to offer AI to the customer, right? First, you had to have AI embedded into your process, right? So unless until you embed AI into your workflows, right? Don't you should not just bolt it. You have to identify what are your internal workflows. How do you design your ops? How do you design your marketing? How do you design your support delivery with that agentic mindset, so that your product is backed up with the real native agent or AI native startup culture.
Thinking.
It's not
Yeah.
that your product is native, but fundamentally your startup is really AI native.
Right. Right.
And these are the three
Uh,
things you had to really look at.
right. That's very interesting. So we'll go to audience questions now. So Namrata says, my question is, what's the biggest AI opportunity that mid-sized scale-ups in India are under leveraging today?
Maybe that's a difficult question to answer at this point of time because the opportunities are something they're lying everywhere, right? As I said, uh, building an AI native product in a domain where things doesn't exist, or you completely reimagine a product with AI nativity. For example, take IDEs, right? Probably which are existing from last 25-30 years. But today, AI native IDEs are disrupting the traditional IDEs, right?
Right.
So something which is AI native, which is already going to operate in a bigger market, existing market, is definitely the place to go. That's what I keep advising. So because you don't need to invent the market, market already exists, but
Yeah.
you have to have a orientation of how you can really disrupt that market with that AI nativity. That's the
Right.
mindset. If you have, yes, there are many opportunities out there which are already big and where a native mindset can really disrupt them.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. So the next question is from Shamanta. She's asked, you've guided many businesses through multiple waves of transformation. How is AI different from previous shifts like mobile first or cloud first?
See, as I mentioned even in my previous conversations, right? So that A first or A native approach, that mindset of a founder, and the product roadmap, right? The product mindset, and also the way organization is built with that AI nativity, right? They're fundamentally very different, and I will not call this as even a transformation, right? It's a big evolution what businesses are going
Right.
through, right? If it is incremental, I know that's I can call probably it's a transformation because yeah, we were mobile first, cloud first, but AI first is we are taking a big leap in humanity, right? This is not incremental. This is a very evolutionary leap that is happening. So
Hmm.
that's how it is going to be very different. It's just not incremental.
Right, right. Thank you so much for that answer. So, I have one question out of curiosity. Can you name one Indian startup that's doing AI right, according to your understanding?
Maybe difficult to comment at this point of time because still I had to come across some great products which are really doing great with respect to AI. I'm yet to come across some startups in India still.
What about Perplexity?
Yeah, of course, they have disrupted search, but at the same time, they are also going to be disrupted by many other products. It's about how they're going to really catch up to the pace and make sure that they stay relevant is more important. Because eventually, whether it is Perplexity or any other GPT, right, they have to rely on the traditional sources of information which have been already being dominated by various companies with search engines, right? Your typical news websites, right? Wikipedia. Everybody have to go to those foundational sources, and eventually, how you are going to offer that zero UI experience, right? Probably for search, also going to make a differentiation. If somebody are
Mhm.
going to really probably disrupt that space, perplexity also may become irrelevant. But yes, to some extent they have disrupted, but it's not the end. Uh, because the distance between a guy who disrupted the search for first time versus somebody who have disrupted the search with AI, right? Still, that gap exists. The gap is very huge in terms of revenue. So
Correct.
unless and until I see proximity with that revenue, I will not say that they're successful.
Right. It's a good start.
Yeah, it's a good start. Yeah.
Right. Okay, Ram, thank you so much for answering those questions with a lot of patience and actionable insights. So, as we conclude today's session, I'd like to convey a heartfelt thank you to you for sharing your thought provoking insights. We hope it left all of you with fresh ideas and actionable strategies on what AI native startups should do and how the future of AI native startups in India is, and what Indian startup founders can learn from this. Thanks to our attendees for joining us, and keep following Coastal 7 on our LinkedIn page. Thanks once again, Ram.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Jasmine. Wish you
Thank
all the best for everyone.
you.
Thank you.